How Apple made India the top U.S. smartphone maker. What this means for the iPhone global tech. In a stunning turn of events, India has surged ahead of China to become the leading producer of smartphones for the U.S. market, thanks to Apple Inc.'s strategic decision to ramp up iPhone assembly in the South Asian nation. For the first time in the quarter ending in June, India dominated the U.S. smartphone shipments, capturing a whopping 44% of the market share, as per Canalys data. This monumental shift has placed India at the helm, surpassing Vietnam, the manufacturing base for Samsung Electronics Co., which now stands at second position. Meanwhile, China, once the unrivaled leader, has seen its share plummet from over 60% a year ago to a mere 25%. But here's where it gets controversial. This seismic change in the global tech landscape raises questions about the implications for China's manufacturing dominance and the future of global supply chains. And this is the part most people miss. It also highlights the growing importance of India as a manufacturing hub, not just for smartphones but potentially for other high-tech products as well. What does this mean for the future of tech manufacturing? Will India continue to rise, or will China reclaim its throne? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This shift could be seen as a bold move by Apple to diversify its production, or a risky gamble that could backfire. What's your take? Let's discuss. India overtakes China as biggest U.S. smartphone exporter. What's behind the shift? In a stunning shift that could reshape global trade dynamics, India has just surpassed China as the top exporter of smartphones to the United States. This milestone marks the first time in history that India has claimed this title, driven by Apple's strategic decision to pivot its manufacturing operations to New Delhi amidst escalating trade tensions between Washington and Beijing. But here's where it gets controversial. Is this move signaling the beginning of the end for China's dominance in tech manufacturing? Or is it simply a temporary adjustment in response to tariffs? Let's dive deeper. According to a report released Monday by research firm Canalys, devices manufactured in India now account for a staggering 44% of all smartphone imports into the U.S. during the second quarter of 2025. To put this into perspective, that's a dramatic surge from just 13% during the same period last year. The total volume of smartphones made in India skyrocketed by an eye-popping 240% year-over-year, underscoring the rapid expansion of the country's manufacturing capabilities. On the flip side, China's share of smartphone exports to the U.S. has plummeted to just 25%, a sharp decline from the 61% it held during the same quarter last year. This means China has not only lost its crown, but has also fallen to third place, trailing behind Vietnam. For a nation that once dominated global electronics production, this drop represents a seismic shift with far-reaching implications. So what's driving this monumental change? According to Sanyam Chaurasia, principal analyst at Canalys, the answer lies in Apple's aggressive push to diversify its manufacturing base. India's newfound leadership in smartphone exports is largely driven by Apple accelerating its manufacturing shift away from China, he explained. The uncertain trade landscape between the U.S. and China has prompted Apple to scale up its production capacity in India over the past several years. Apple, the world's most valuable tech company, has reportedly dedicated the majority of its Indian export capacity to supplying the U.S. market throughout 2025. However, Chaurasia was quick to note that Apple remains heavily reliant on its well-established manufacturing hubs in China. This dependency highlights the delicate balancing act the company must perform as it navigates geopolitical tensions while ensuring uninterrupted supply chains. Interestingly, smartphones containing semiconductors have been exempt from some of the harshest tariffs imposed by former U.S. At the time, Cook predicted that the majority of iPhones sold in the U.S. will soon carry India as their country of origin. Trump's broader strategy has been clear: impose steep tariffs on goods from America's trading partners to incentivize companies to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. While this approach aims to revive domestic industries, it has also had unintended consequences. China, in particular, has borne the brunt of these measures. Earlier this year, Trump slapped a jaw-dropping 145% overall tariff on Chinese goods, prompting Beijing to retaliate with its own 125% levy on American products. Both sides eventually agreed to roll back these reciprocal tariffs temporarily for a 90-day window, a truce that negotiators are currently working to extend during talks in Sweden. And this is the part most people miss. Even though tensions have eased somewhat, months of unpredictable tariff swings have pushed manufacturers to explore alternatives beyond China. This trend isn't entirely new. Companies have been gradually diversifying their supply chains for years due to growing concerns about over-reliance on a single country. Fast-growing economies like Vietnam and India have emerged as attractive options, offering lower labor costs and favorable government incentives. The COVID-19 pandemic further underscored the risks of centralized production. China's stringent zero-COVID policies disrupted global supply chains, exposing vulnerabilities that many businesses were eager to address. As Canalys analysts noted in their report, the uncertain outcome of negotiations with China has accelerated supply chain reorientation. With all these factors at play, one can't help but wonder, is this the start of a long-term realignment in global manufacturing, or merely a short-term reaction to volatile trade policies? Could India sustain its momentum and become a permanent fixture in the tech manufacturing landscape? And how might this impact consumers in terms of pricing and product availability? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think India's rise as a manufacturing powerhouse is good news for the global economy? Or does it raise concerns about job losses in other regions? Share your opinions in the comments below. This is China in U.S. smartphone exports. Apple's manufacturing shift explained. In a remarkable turn of events, India has now surpassed China to become the leading exporter of smartphones to the United States, as highlighted by a recent report from the research firm Canalys. This shift is indicative of a broader transformation in the global manufacturing landscape, particularly as companies seek to navigate the complexities and uncertainties brought about by tariffs and trade tensions with China. During the second quarter, smartphones manufactured in India constituted an impressive 44% of all U.S. imports of these devices, a dramatic rise from a mere 13% in the same timeframe last year. Canalys reported that the total number of smartphones produced in India skyrocketed by 240% compared to the previous year. This surge is not just a statistic. It represents a significant pivot in the global supply chain. On the other hand, the share of smartphones exported from China to the U.S. has seen a steep decline, dropping to 25% in the quarter ending in June, down from 61% a year prior. Interestingly, Vietnam has also increased its share of smartphone exports to the U.S., reaching 30%, further emphasizing the shifting dynamics in the market. The primary catalyst for this remarkable growth in Indian smartphone exports can be attributed to Apple's strategic decision to ramp up its manufacturing operations in India. Amid rising trade uncertainties between the U.S. and China, Apple has been accelerating its plans to produce a larger portion of its iPhones in India. According to Sanyam Sharazia, a principal analyst at Canalys, this marks the first instance where India has exported more smartphones to the U.S. than China. Apple's ambitions are ambitious. The company aims to manufacture approximately 25% of all iPhones sold in the U.S. within the next few years. This shift is not without its challenges, as former President Trump has previously threatened Apple with additional tariffs and has urged CEO Tim Cook to consider domestic production. Experts have pointed out that such a move would be nearly impossible without significantly increasing iPhone prices, which could alienate consumers. While many of Apple's flagship products, including iPhones and MacBooks, have been granted exemptions from Trump's reciprocal tariffs, there are concerns that this reprieve may only be temporary. Other global competitors, such as Samsung Electronics and Motorola, are also attempting to relocate their assembly operations for U.S.-bound smartphones to India. However, their progress has been notably slower and less extensive compared to Apple's rapid expansion. The trend of shifting final assembly to India is gaining momentum among various global manufacturers. Renaud Anjorin, the executive vice president of Agilion Technology, an electronics manufacturer based in China, noted that his company is currently renovating a facility in India to facilitate this transition. The plan for India is moving ahead as fast as we can, Anjorin stated, expressing optimism about beginning trial production runs soon before scaling up to full manufacturing capacity. However, it's important to note that yield rates, which measure manufacturing efficiency, tend to be lower in India and Vietnam compared to China, according to Anjorin. This means that while shipments, representing the number of devices sent to retailers, are increasing, they do not necessarily reflect final sales, serving instead as a proxy for market demand. Despite the surge in shipments, overall iPhone sales in the U.S. have declined by 11% year-on-year, totaling 13.3 million units in the second quarter, reversing the previous quarter's growth of 25.7%. Globally, iPhone shipments also fell by 2% from the previous year, reaching 44.8 million units during the April to June quarter. Apple's stock has faced challenges as well, dropping 14% this year, partly due to concerns over its vulnerability to tariff fluctuations and increasing competition in both the smartphone and artificial intelligence sectors. Although the company has begun assembling iPhone 16 Pro models in India, it still heavily relies on China's more established manufacturing infrastructure to meet the demand for this premium model in the U.S. In April, Trump imposed a 26% tariff on imports from India, which is significantly lower than the triple-digit tariffs imposed on China at that time, although these duties were paused until an August 1 deadline. This evolving scenario raises important questions. Will India maintain its lead in smartphone exports? Or will China reclaim its position? How will these shifts impact consumers and the broader tech industry? We invite you to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below.